How did Canadians live through the sky-high interest rates in the 1980s? When the central bank raised interest rates to 5%, Canadian mortgage slaves seemed to see the end of the world. Many people did not know the survival status of people in Canada under high interest rates in the 1980s and 1990s. What kind of mood would interest rates as high as 20% be? When looking back at the ultra-high interest rates of the 1980s, although the current economic environment is unlikely to see such high rates again, according to Richard Blackwell's report, even a slight interest rate hike could have a serious impact on the financial and psychological well-being of today's homeowners. In 1982, the average housing price in Canada was $72,500 Canadian dollars. Also in March 1982, the average 5-year fixed mortgage rate was 19.4%. In 2015, the average housing price in Canada was $439,100 Canadian dollars, while the average 5-year fixed mortgage rate in March 2015 was 3.8%. The house purchased by Steve Douglas and his wife in Benton, Ontario in the 1980s is considered a miracle by today's buyers. He spent $189,000 Canadian dollars, but their mortgage interest rate was surprisingly high, reaching 18%. He said, "At that time, we paid approximately $2,200 per month, which was almost all of our income. Our entire income was basically consumed by mortgage loans, bills, and various expenses. That was a terrifying experience." From the autumn of 1980 to the autumn of 1982, the 5-year fixed mortgage interest rate remained above 15%, reaching a peak of over 21% in the second half of 1981. At that time, the Bank of Canada raised interest rates in an attempt to curb runaway inflation that plagued the economy of Canada. But homebuyers have to endure relatively high interest rates for a considerable period of time. From 1973 to 1991, the 5-year fixed mortgage interest rate did not fall below 10%. The economic recession of the 1980s led to high inflation and high unemployment rates. Nowadays, people under the age of 40 have not had a first-hand experience of this period. In recent years, the situation has been similar. Let's take the experience of the elderly as a reference and take a look at the true feelings of people at that time. Netizen 1, the unemployment rate is 10%. Most of the people I graduated with spent 6 months or more to find entry-level job. Netizen 2, originally, a degree was basically a guarantee of finding a good job, but at that time no one was hiring and they had to take everything they could, sometimes finding jobs as farm workers or forklift drivers. This was very unusual at the time. NG had difficulty finding a job. Netizen 3, I remember that for every 0.25% increase in interest rates, the broker will increase the weekly rent by $20, otherwise the homeowners will be hurt by raising interest rates, the landlord will pass on the cost of raising interest rates. Netizen 4, the landlord will try to increase the rent, but they will find that there are no tenants at all. Netizen 5, discount stores are becoming increasingly popular. For a period of time, most retail stores focused on value, with less blatant packaging, consumption downgrade. Netizen 6, people often say that buying a house in the 1980s was suicide. Spending $80,000 Canadian dollars to buy a house in a mediocre place with a 1-year interest rate can cause a mental breakdown, but if you survive and have 30 years of lower interest rates and higher wages, you will experience an explosion in housing prices in the late 1990s and an unstoppable prosperity after the millennium. By 22 years, you may own over 1 million properties. At that time, your community will be considered a good community, and your mortgage will be almost worthless. Assets will appreciate with inflation. Netizen 7, at any stage of my life, gasoline has never truly become cheaper. In the long run, it is always increasing. Alternative fuel vehicles are unstoppable. Netizen 8, I don't remember any change in the cost of living. I'm still young, and I don't need to manage anything except social life, young without worries. Netizen 9, at that time, housing prices were much cheaper, especially in inner-city areas where people didn't really want to live. Suburbs are all the rage, counter-urbanization. Netizen 10, the biggest losers in the recession are those banks and construction companies. Many people, businesses, and banks have gone bankrupt. Job choices outweigh efforts. Netizen 11, many people have lost a lot of money, interest rates have been raised to control household expenses, and many people have been forced to sell houses and wander the streets due to bankruptcy. This is not a good time to engage in car sales or tourism. Pay attention to leverage. Netizen 12, people will get used to it, because wages are also rising, and inflation will also make loans insignificant. It used to be very rare to see a loan of $100K now.